In this video, I'm going to cover the difference between the Pink Princess, Orange Princess, White Princess, and Red Anderson. So welcome to the Royal Philodendron Bowl. What I mean by that is this is basically all the princesses. This is where you get the Pink Princess, the White Princess, the White Wizard. All of those plants are part of this family. So let's dive right in. Ooh. This is Philodendron Pink Princess. This one is actually the Marble Galaxy. It has gone through a few iterations of the Pink Princess depending on when you get it. Some of them were really low in variegation, and they would even be sold as Burgundy Princesses because they were cool but had no variegation. And then eventually the tissue culture just selection got so good that most plants that you find right now out and about are going to be a more high variegation kind of specimen. So this one is known as the Galaxy, Marble Galaxy. I think it's a made up name, but it's beautiful. I mean, look at this footage. I absolutely love this plant. It is currently sitting in a pond semi-hydro with leca mixture, mostly because that's what I'm trying to put all my plants in. So far, it has had a good time. I'm a little concerned about the stem, it being a little too thin for how top heavy it is getting. So that potentially might mean it needs a little bit more support or something like that. I have not found this plant to be the most difficult to grow or keep leaves, but you still get the Cinderella shoe. Like you still have to really spray when the leaf is coming out. I use a brush, a wet brush, to sort of like help the leaves out. You will still get that with this, but it's such an incredible plant that I just think it's worth it. Especially if what I paid for this was like $10 or $14. It was great. You will also find some other ones that like the red cherry or dark cherry or something like that. I honestly think at that point you're just paying for a specific plant, like a cultivar almost. But most of them are going to really cool, and they're going to be high variegation. So Pink Princess is not my favorite of the princesses, but it's definitely fantastic. If you've been watching my channel, you already know what's next, and that is the Orange Princess. This is indeed my favorite plant. It is my favorite princess. It is also sitting in a pawn leca sort of mixture. I think it's going to be helpful because it grows a lot of leaves, and I think it needs a lot of help, particularly this specimen. So there's two generations of Philodendron Orange Princess. Generation 1, I think, is probably just like that one cultivar that came out of the Pink Princess, most likely, and it has a much lower variegation. It has bigger leaves. You will usually find this as from like a cutting, like it started with like a chunk and now it's a plant. It tends to have a much lower variegation. Then generation 2 are the ones that are coming from tissue culture, and this one's come out with a lot of variegation on them. It has that it has a really marbly kind of look on the leaves, almost like yellowy, and if you give it a lot of lights, they turn orange. Now, the issue that I had with mine, and I think it's an issue even though I think it's like the prettiest of issues, um, it has too much variegation. So it started giving me like a half moon that I was obsessed over. You can see some footage of it. And then it went into like a full moon and I was like, oh no, I'm not obsessed with this. And then it just put out like another like leaf with a tiny little bit of green. And I was like, oh no, it's gonna kill itself. And then now it has just been putting out like 2 full moons. And the last leaf that it put out, it had a lot of green, as you can see, well, the footage. You can see that it had a lot, mostly green, and you see the patchiness on it. But this last one is looking like another full moon. Now, something that is happening to my plant that I have no idea what is happening or why it's happening, or I have not seen anyone else's plant do this, is the first full moon of this plant and the half moon, they actually turn almost white. The variegation went from this deep orange into like a light orange, into like a white with like the kiss of orange, and eventually just died and turned yellow, the other part. But this one is doing something different. This one is actually turning green, which I'm not sure why. So the leaf that started doing that was the third one up. The variegation, instead of going from bright orange to yellow to white to dead, it's going from bright orange to yellow to greenish. So I mean, look at that footage. I'm showing it. It's not sick. It's fine. Both of them are doing it. Over here you see it. This one is also doing partially part of it. And I'm not sure if that's, have you seen this happen in Orange Princess? Like Is the variegation also kind of like turning greenish, almost like a Jose Buono or a Florida Ghost? Or is my plant just dripping? I'm not sure. But it's really interesting. I'm gonna keep you posted. I'm gonna try to make as many shorts about this plant as I can, either because it's gonna die or because it's gonna turn into something unique and really cool. This latest leaf is looking very, very orange. So I really hope that it survives. And if it doesn't, I'll make sure to buy a new one because I'm obsessed with this plant. Actually, I did notice that it has a tiny little bit of baby coming out of the bottom. So this plant might actually be two plants at this point, and I'm really excited. So out of the three princesses, this one is my favorite. Up next is the messiest of the princesses. It's the white princess. And the reason I'm saying that is because I find this one to be so confusing because you think of the white royals as three, even though it's two completely separate plants. It's really confusing. So let me help you bring some clarity on the Philodendron royals. So you have the white princess and the white wizard. Both of these are erubescence hybrids, whether it just happened to look like that, it's a cultivar, it's a hybrid. I could not find a definitive answer, except that those two are part of this. White Knight is actually a domesticum hybrid that I guess got selected. I find it to be very low in variegation, but now they have a White Knight marble, which gives it a lot of white and is really beautiful. So you have these two categories, right? You're gonna have the erubescence one and then the domesticum ones. But then someone had the brilliant idea of creating even a more confusing one. Someone had the idea of mixing the White Knight with Philodendron Pink Princess, right? This is one also in this kind of same category, but not really. The plant that I actually think is the best of them, and that is Philodendron Red Anderson. This is also confusing. What can we just agree to not make it so confusing? I get it, it's marketing, but it just makes it so difficult to have a conversation about the same plant when they just call it like 20 different names. So I found these labeled as Red Anderson, Pink Anderson, and then White Anderson. I was like, bruh, so confusing. Some of them is like they're in Europe, other ones are in Asia. This one is from like Indonesia. It's a mess. What I can tell you is what I know, and that is that I purchased a 5 pack for like $15 of Red Anderson, and I'm about to show you the diversity of variegations that I got out of the exact same baggie. So you can see my plants. Let me shift a little bit. Whoop. You can see the variety here. You have some of them that literally have almost no variegation on them. It has these red streaks on them. Then you have another one that has the white, which I think is absolutely beautiful. Then you have another one that creates a much more sectoral kind of like variegation. And then you have one that just creates this kind of like layer. It basically kind of looks like a tricolor white princess. Again, let's not get started with how confusing that shit is. But this one gets this pinkiness color in the middle and it gives you so much diversity. So out of all of them, the one that I think it's the most interesting is going to be this one. Mostly because the default variegation is still more interesting than the white wizard or even the white princess on the other side, but you still can get some interesting versions of those. So you can get the white wizard on a high variegation, which is called that, and then you can get the tricolor white princess, which has a pinkiness to it. So even though everything is kind of confusing, I think this plant just ends up being the best of all the worlds, and that is why Philodendron Red Anderson has been fairly easy for me to size up from tissue culture and just grow under different places and conditions. And so far, it's my favorite of this mess, Philodendrons.
Thank you for watching and let me know which one is your favorite princess, which ones do you own? I want to know what everyone's experience is like, and YouTube thinks this video is the next one that you should watch right now.